What's up, AR fam? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Sushant, and it is the most wonderful time of the year. It's Oscar season. Oscar season is when people are talking about movies, they're watching movies, and most of all, they're celebrating the movies. They're celebrating some of the incredible filmmaking from last year, and we're at the end of award season. We've had the Golden Globes, the BAFTAs, the Screen Actors Guild, the Critics' Choice, and we're here. And I gotta say, this year's Oscar race is hard to predict. Now, of course, I talked about the 10 Best Picture nominees in a separate video, but this year's Oscar race is incredibly hard to predict. There's a total of 23 awards, and I could say, very confidently what I think the front runner is to win Best Picture, but I kind of want to build up to that and hopefully show you that even though some of the big categories are in place, there's a lot of stuff that have 2, maybe 3 horses in the race. And it's kind of hard to predict. I'm going to say I'm maybe only confident in like 10 categories, but I've been paying attention to the statistics for years. I really hope I can have some insight and hopefully help you improve your Oscar ballots going into Oscar night. Now, I want to quickly go through some of the short films. I personally have not had the chance to see any of the short films. So we have documentary short, live action short, and best animated short. Based on what, some of the precursor awards are winning, that's, awards at other festivals or award shows. I'm going to say that documentary short is between The Last Repair Shop and the ABCs of Book Banning. It might go to the ABCs of Book Banning because that's a little bit more of a relevant topic. Also, before I continue, let's not forget that the Oscars are subjective and the Academy's voting. This isn't necessarily about my opinion. This is just about what I think is going to win. But I'll, of course, throw my opinion in there every now and then. So, best documentary short, I think the ABCs of Book Banning has a little bit more of a chance to win above the rest. It's about, the banning of books and literary material about the LGBT community, in Florida, and it's very recent and fresh, and it's up on that list, and I've heard it's a very good movie. So I think that's gonna win. Live action short, I think is going to go to The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, primarily because it's directed by Wes Anderson. And of course, it's an amazing film, but I just think it's too strong a contender to allow anything else to win. Wes Anderson is a beloved director. He's made amazing things like The Grand Budapest Hotel and Moonrise Kingdom. He hasn't won an Oscar yet. And I think this is going to be the time where he actually does get to win that elusive Oscar. So The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is my prediction. Best animated feature, another 2-horse race between Letter to a Pig and War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. War is Over conceptually and has a lot of, actual needle drops of music with the, John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Is sort of an interesting concept, but I've heard, again, Letter to a Pig does a little bit more with its filmmaking technique and is a little bit more enticing in that regard. So I'm going to say Letter to a Pig wins, though again, would not be surprised. For any of the shorts, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong. I mean, the shorts are always the hardest to predict. They're the things that are going to ruin your Oscar ballots, so good luck. Good luck with the shorts. But now let's move on to the 20 remaining categories. Let's start with Best Visual Effects. I'm going to take a sip of water. Best Visual Effects, of course, awarding the best visual effects. And anything, of course, CGI or even oftentimes practical and what's on set, but primarily CGI, is considered and typically rewarded in this category. A few months ago, it would have seemed like the film The Creator was going to win, which does have incredible visual effects and does a lot with its limited budget, but I'm going to predict Godzilla Minus One. Godzilla Minus One is a film that has caught a lot of steam late into the game, a lot of passion for that film, and it's the only nomination that it has. Of course, the visual effects in that film are phenomenal, but I do think a lot of the passion behind the film that sort of allowed it to gain more popularity in the last couple of months, especially compared to the response that The Creator received, I think just the love for Godzilla Minus One is going to take it over the line and it's going to allow it to win. So I'm going to go with Godzilla Minus One. Best film editing, Oppenheimer. I mean, the Can You Hear the Music sequence alone is probably what's going to get it over the line, but Oppenheimer has to do many things. It has to have 2 timelines that each have their own flashbacks and then montages within them, and balancing a 3-hour structure to tell this incredibly dense story. It is certainly, I mean, I think it's going to win. While all the films on this list are well edited, I think Oppenheimer has, you know, far and above it. It's won most of it. It won the Critics' Choice, the BAFTA. You know, it's going to win. I think the Oscar for Best Film Editing as well. First Oscar for Jennifer Lame. She's edited amazing stuff. I'm really excited for her. Best Makeup and Hairstyling. I think it's gonna go to Maestro. While some of the films on the list, whether it's Golda or you know, even Poor Things, might have you know, incredible makeup, and then some makeup that is, I don't want to say it's obvious. I don't think there's anything too much that's like in your face, like complete bodysuit level makeup, like The Whale, for example, which was the shoo-in to win makeup last year. Maestro, the reason I think it's going to win is because of the details and the subtlety with which they are able to age Bradley Cooper through the story. It also, in spite of the controversy that, you know, this film did have with, you know, some of the makeup that he had on, I think in spite of that, it's still going to win. I do think that's going to be Maestro's lone win for the night, but I would say a pretty well-deserved win nonetheless. The makeup in the film is very good. I'm going to talk about costume design and production design together. The 5 nominees, Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, the same in both categories. This is a very hard one to predict because I think in both, the 2 leads are Barbie and Poor Things. It just kind of depends on what people are going to reward. If I had to say, even though, you know, if I pick Barbie and Poor Things wins, or pick Poor Things and Barbie wins, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be surprised if any of the other 3 films, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, or Napoleon, won. But I think with these 2 categories, the reason I'm going to predict Barbie for costume and production are as follows. First off, costume, I mean, there's a ton of variety with regards to the costumes and sort of representing these dolls that have existed throughout popular culture. There's, you know, costumes for the Kens. I just think the volume of noticeable costumes and, like, you know, foreground costumes and, you know, speaking characters in costume and stuff like that is so much more than any other film. And the variety of which I think is just going to push Barbie over the line, and it's going to make it win the Oscar for Best Costume Design. Jacqueline Duran as well, the nominee, is one of the most respected costume designers in the industry. I mean, she's won, I'm going to look this up. How many Oscars has she won? She's been nominated 9 times and she's won 2. And I definitely think this could be the 3rd win. Best production design, I also think is going to be Barbie, but I think it's going to be Barbie for a different reason, because I think the Barbenheimer impact of the summer has, you know, while of course it's lessened over time as any impact would, it is still culturally very relevant going into this award show. And I think what Barbie does specifically really well is the Barbie world has transcended pop culture. It exists in everyone's mind. It is immediately noticeable. Again, it's based off, you know, real Barbie doll houses and things, but it is such an interesting plastic world. And then also has the contrast of the real world. But I think most of its fascinating production design exists in the Barbie world, and more importantly, allows for a lot of the hilariosity of the film. Something as simple as a sequence with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, you know, traveling from the Barbie world to the real world, and it's like, oh, they're on the water, and oh, they're in space, and there's a lot of funny things kind of delivered through the production design of that scene. But again, I mean, the scene on the beach will simply tell you that there's such a blend of plastic and reality to that world that I think is the reason Barbie is deservedly going to win that award. Moving on, let's talk about Best Sound. Best Sound is a 2-horse race, though I'm going to give the edge to Oppenheimer over The Zone of Interest. Oppenheimer and The Zone of Interest are the 2 that I think really are in the running, and sound in and of itself used to be 2 categories back in the day. It used to be sound mixing and sound editing. Now, sound mixing essentially partly includes the sound that you record on set, which is why a film like Les Miserables won the award. You know, it's they were singing on set, and you sort of have to balance that as you record. But you could also look at sound mixing in the context of a film like Uncut Gems, which has all these layers of sounds on top of them to create this anxious feeling, but you can still kind of hear what's important. And so that's where the sound mix comes in. The sound edit is typically sounds that are created in post-production and is more about the creation of these potentially artificial sounds. Think of a lightsaber or a blaster in Star Wars. That creating that sound is more about sound editing. Of course, there's a bit more depth to each of those categories, but the general view is those two. And the reason I think that The Zone of Interest is a strong contender is because the film's entire conceit is based on sound. It is people living their normal life and the sounds of Auschwitz camp taking place right outside, the sounds of war taking place in contrast to this normal life, sort of scoring the film essentially. It really is wonderful, and in terms of its execution, and that so much of that, while they didn't have to necessarily come up and create sounds that you can only imagine in your head, like these are very real sounds, the way they're played in and layered into the film is near perfect, and it sort of creeps up on you as the film goes. I will say though, I think I'm going to give the edge to Oppenheimer, because Oppenheimer does have very specific scenes of silence that it does similar things with in terms of what sounds it chooses to play and not to play, and to what volume. Especially when, a bomb is being blown off, or Cillian Murphy has this, I guess, horrifying vision in front of him. But the reason I'm going to give the edge to Oppenheimer is because it has to create the sounds of our quantum world. There's a lot of visuals of literally atomic-sized things, and it has to create sounds that work perfectly with that. And I think that creation is something that is, I'm sure, going to get recognized, and I feel like a lot of voters will, give it the edge for as well. So I do think Oppenheimer is going to win for Best Sound. Moving on to Best Cinematography being, the way anything looks, the shot choices, the way things are filmed. It's essentially, you could say, the visual experience for the most part. I mean, a lot of things play into that, but the cinematographer is very much in charge of that. I think Oppenheimer's got this in the bag. I mean, Oppenheimer's won this at so many places, the Critics' Choice Awards, the BAFTAs, various critic circles. And I think Oppenheimer is a visually stunning movie. They film it in IMAX, which gives it additional respect. They had to do half of it in black and white, the other half in color. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it does such a good job of capturing the big and the small all in the same frame. And I think for that reason alone, along with a lot of the camera trickery that it does to show you, say, Cillian Murphy's world around him shaking, it's all done in camera. And I think because it's not nominated for visual effects, it definitely is going to get the respect for those things in cinematography as well. I think Oppenheimer's got cinematography. That's already like 3 awards for Oppenheimer. We got many more coming. Don't you worry about that. I'm going to take a sip of water. Woo, a lot of talking. Let's move on to Best Original Song. Now, 5 nominees. 2 of them are from Barbie, and I think one of the Barbie songs is going to win. I will say, I think the most beloved, exciting performance of the night, because they do perform the 5 songs on stage, I think that's going to be I'm Just Ken. You're going to have Ryan Gosling performing this hilariously entertaining song, and I think that's probably going to get the most applause at the show. But the song that's going to win, that I think it is What Was I Made For from Barbie by Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas. They've won an Oscar before, I believe. They did for the James Bond theme. And I think that What Was I Made For is a little bit more in line with the kind of songs that typically win at the Oscars. Of course, RRR won last year, which is that energetic, exciting, fun song. And that's kind of a rarity for the most part, because if we look at some of the more recent winners in the last many years, I mean, No Time to Die won a couple of years ago, which was Billie Eilish and Phineas O'Connell. You had Fight For You from Judas and the Black Messiah. You had Shallow from A Star Is Born. Even City of Stars from La La Land, and the fun, more high energetic La La Land songs didn't even get nominated. And of course, another James Bond theme. And I think What Was I Made For has a similar energy to their previous No Time to Die song, and I think it's going to win. And it's been winning at a lot of the other award shows. I think now we're getting into the categories where we can look at what the other award shows have done. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that Best Original Song, What Was I Made For, won at the Golden Globes. That being said, the Critics' Choice did give it to I'm Just Ken. What we've learned is that Barbie's winning either way, but I am going to give the edge to What Was I Made For. But if I'm Just Ken wins, I'm a happy man. There are no complaints. I'm a happy man. Best Original Score, Oppenheimer. Ludwig Göransson, genius. Some of the best movie music of all time. I literally have it on vinyl. My personal opinion aside, it has won every award so far, from the BAFTA to the Golden Globe to the Critics' Choice. There are no other major precursors to look at. It's sweeping everywhere it goes, rightly so. It's amazing. And there's a lot of music in the movie too. Not that there isn't good competition this year, but it's winning. Oppenheimer's winning. Let's go on next to Best Documentary Feature. Now, I haven't had the chance to see all of these yet. Quick shout out to Nisha Pahuja, who directed To Kill a Tiger, an Indian filmmaker. And amongst these five, what I think is going to win is 20 Days in Mariupol, because it's gotten a lot of good buzz in general, but the only two other films to have won some of the major awards, both are nominated. The documentary category is very odd when it comes to the ones that it picks. Like, there's always an obvious front runner. This past year, it was American Symphony, and then it doesn't get nominated, and that's kind of a trend for the Academy, weirdly enough. So it makes predictions easier sometimes. Still a Michael J. Fox movie's not nominated. American Symphony's not nominated. 20 Days in Mariupol is going to win. I feel pretty confident in that choice, even though I haven't seen any of them. I think the betting odds would put you in that direction too. Moving on to Best International Feature Film. This one is, if there's any no-brainer tonight, it's Best International Feature Film. Of course, quick shout out to Society of the Snow. If you haven't seen it, it's nominated. It's fantastic. But the film that's going to win is The Zone of Interest. I mean, there are two foreign films nominated for Best Picture this year. It's The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall. And Anatomy of a Fall isn't nominated. The way this works is pretty simple. Each country essentially submits their pick for Best International Feature Film. And France this past year chose to submit a film called The Taste of Things, which I've heard is a phenomenal film, but didn't necessarily have the traction that Anatomy of a Fall has gotten in the recent months to get even a Best Picture nomination. So it's not The Zone of Interest versus Anatomy of a Fall. It is just The Zone of Interest versus itself. It's going to win. There's no world in which this film does not win. The Zone of Interest is taking this award. Congratulations, Jonathan Glazer. I will say some of that submission thing is another reason where you could see some not so strategic choices being made. RRR is a huge example where a lot of industry people feel like RRR would have been nominated had it been the Indian film submitted, but it was not the Indian film submitted. There was a different film. And so as a consequence, it still won its Oscar for Best Original Song, but it missed out on that coveted nomination that India hasn't had since, I think, 2001 when Lagan came out. Moving on to Best Animated Feature, two-horse race. Woo! The Boy and the Heron and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is probably the one I'm having the hardest time with in terms of picking, because Miyazaki is one of the most well-regarded filmmakers in the industry. People have the utmost respect for him, and he won for Spirited Away like 22 years ago. And so The Boy and the Heron is rumored to be his last film. I mean, I'm sure he's Soderbergh type where, this is my last film. It's probably not his last film. But The Boy and the Heron is something that people love. People also love Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The previous Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the film before this, or that it is a sequel to, that won Best Animated Feature just 5 years ago. And that film was amazing, and this film is amazing. What is working against it are the fact that people expected it to get a lot more nominations, like original score, which I'm disappointed it did not get, but people expected it to get those nominations, and it didn't. Also, this film does kind of, I guess, have one other thing working against it, and the fact that it's a part one of this two-part conclusion, and at some point you can kind of tell that it's a bit of a part one, and I think that might just take away from its ability to win this year. But again, if Spider-Man wins, no complaints. I love that movie. But I'm gonna, with very low confidence, I'm going to give the edge to The Boy and the Heron with minimal confidence. What do we got? We got 8 more. Nice. I need a sip of water. My gosh, a lot of talking. We are on to the final 8 categories: the screenplays, the performances, director, and picture. Let's get into Best Adapted Screenplay. I think it's gonna go to American Fiction. I kind of want to talk about some of the other nominees. If Killers of the Flower Moon was here, this would have been a very tough pick, but somehow that didn't get nominated when it was the expected frontrunner. While I think, Barbie's an interesting one because it's mostly been considered an original screenplay at other award shows. This is the rare one at the Oscars where it's considered an adapted screenplay because it's theoretically adapted off of, the Barbie brand and those dolls and those characters that were created. So it's going to be interesting to see Barbie compete against the adapted screenplay lineup. That being said, the reason I think American Fiction is going to win is, aside from the fact that it's well written, of course, it won Best Adapted Screenplay at the Critics' Choice. It won at the BAFTAs as well. The only award, the big award show that it hasn't won at is the Golden Globes, which has a shared writing category, and in that category, an original screenplay won. So technically against other adapted screenplays, it's still undefeated. It's a film about writing. It is, kind of central to our time, very much about a debate, and it is well written. And I think for those reasons, it's probably got the edge over some of the other films. I mean, Poor Things is a really difficult film to write and has this weird, amazing tone. But I think it's a little too weird for the Academy to recognize it for screenplay. I'd say Barbie's probably second place in this run, even though Oppenheimer's going to take home some of the big awards. I think, Christopher Nolan's going to get his recognition elsewhere, which I'll get to shortly. And the zone of interest being foreign language and very simple, I don't think is going to win. I'm going to put Barbie at number 2, though. I think we haven't seen Barbie compete in this lineup yet, so it's a bit of a hard pick. But I think American Fiction's got it. I'll put my money on American Fiction. And I'm more confident about original screenplay going to Anatomy of a Fall. Anatomy of a Fall is this legal drama, a ton of attention to detail, a lot of dialogue, and it's somehow the momentum of the film is in its words. And I think that's a big reason it's going to win. It won the Golden Globe. It won the BAFTA as well. The only place it lost is at the Critics' Choice, and it lost to Barbie, which it is not competing with. So I think Anatomy of a Fall is going to win. I don't think May December has a shot. It's the only film not nominated for Best Picture here. I don't think Maestro has a shot. I don't think the screenplay of that film is nearly as well regarded as the performances or the direction. The Holdovers and Past Lives are strong contenders. I would have said they were stronger contenders before the Academy Award nominations came out, but now knowing that those directors aren't nominated, I just think Anatomy of a Fall has enough one-ups on the rest of the movies, and Justine Triet is also nominated for Best Director, and I think this is going to be the one where she gets her recognition, very similar to it reminds me of 2020, where you had Florian Zeller winning for The Father, and you had Emerald Fennell winning for Promising Young Woman. They were both writer-directors who did not win the big award. And this year you're going to have Cord Jefferson winning for American Fiction and Justine Triet winning for Anatomy of a Fall. I think I feel somewhat good about the screenplays, but I feel fantastic about the supporting performances. Okay. Winners at the SAG, the Golden Globe, BAFTA, and the Critics' Choice. Winners pretty much everywhere. Very hard to argue. Best Supporting Actress, Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Best Supporting Actor, Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. What else needs to be said? These are incredible performances. You look at the Supporting Actress category, I can't even really pick a number 2. it's tough to pick a number 2 in this race. People would have said Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple earlier in the year, but she hasn't really won a ton of stuff. Divine Joy Randolph has been nailing this award season. She's got it in the bag. The same way I think Robert Downey Jr. has too. A lot of people were saying it was going to be Robert Downey Jr. versus Ryan Gosling, but not really. I mean, Ryan Gosling has not really threatened Downey too much in a lot of the award shows, and so I think Robert Downey Jr.'s got this. He's also amazing. He's phenomenal. So I think he's gonna win. Now, that being said, we're back to the 2-horse races because we have Best Actress. Whew. It's the Battle of the Stones. It's Lily Gladstone and Emma Stone. Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon, Emma Stone for Poor Things. I mean, 2 performances that could not be more different from one another. An award season that is not helping us make a determination because so the Golden Globes have 2 categories. Emma Stone won hers, Lily Gladstone won hers. Emma Stone then won the Critics' Choice and the BAFTA, and Lily Gladstone won the Screen Actors Guild Award. So it's pretty much a split, mildly in Emma Stone's favor, but Lily Gladstone is also the first Native American woman to get nominated for an acting Oscar. She would now be the first one to win if she wins. And early in the year, she was definitely the top contender. What I find interesting is and Emma Stone's won an Oscar too, but these performances are just so different. Lily Gladstone is very tame. She's the powerful one in the room who doesn't need to say too much to gain control. Emma Stone plays a baby coming into sexual awakening in an adult's body, and it's a completely different performance in a completely different movie. So it is, the thing about some of the Oscars, it's so hard to compare, but I don't know. You put your money on any of them, you're not wrong to do that. Not that the other performances aren't amazing, but if I had to predict, and I promise you I've changed this prediction day after day, but if I had to make a prediction, I would say Lily Gladstone because of the significance of what it holds and the fact that her performance is a little less weird, and I think the Academy might be more accepting of that. I think the problem is that Killers of the Flower Moon not getting a Best Screenplay nomination doesn't give me confidence in the Academy's overall outlook towards the film. So it's tough to say, but I'm gonna say Killers of the Flower Moon, Lily Gladstone winning that one. Best Actor, I again inching towards Cillian Murphy. He's, of course, he won his Golden Globe, the BAFTA, and the Screen Actors Guild, whereas Paul Giamatti won the Critics' Choice and the Golden Globe. Those two are the front runners, while the other performances are great once again. But I mean, it's a tough one. You wouldn't be wrong to bet on either. But I think Cillian Murphy is going to win because the film, he's the titular character. The film is so close up on his face so much. He has to not just age through the film, but display every kind of emotion and represent this larger than life figure. And his performance has had like 6 to 8 months to be loved by the mainstream public. And I think that's going to help in his favor. And I think he's going to win. But hey, I mean, I've predicted Oppenheimer for 6 and what will be more awards very shortly. So, I can see some voters skewing away from voting for Oppenheimer and everything. And if that plays into them not voting for Cillian Murphy because they've already voted for Christopher Nolan and Robert Downey Jr., I wouldn't be surprised. And I could be Paul Giamatti, but I'm gonna say Cillian just about has this one. Just about. Moving on to the final 2 categories. Best Director. Finally, it's Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is one of the most renowned directors of all time. One of the most beloved by the mainstream too, and his work has, in spite of the recognition and the money that his work has made, it still does not feel like it's gotten the recognition it deserves. He's winning. He's won every big award show so far. He's winning. Nothing else to say. Oppenheimer is an achievement in filmmaking, and he's winning. Best Picture, Oppenheimer. I've said it a lot. Oppenheimer's winning. It's won everything from the Golden Globe to the Critics' Choice to the BAFTA to the Producers Guild. In terms of, what I'll do to have some fun, is I want to get into each of these films real quick, but I want to give you the rankings in terms of how likely each of the 10 of them are to win, and then I'll finally close out with Oppenheimer. My general predictions, though, to kind of give you some numbers, I've predicted Oppenheimer to win 8 of its 13 awards that it's eligible for. Barbie winning, Oppenheimer winning a ton of technical stuff as well as performances, 2 of them, director and picture. Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, is going to get 1 of the 10 being actress. Poor Things, I don't think I predicted Poor Things for anything. And it's got 11 nominations, so I'm already kind of doubting my decision here. But, I think, films with 10 nominations haven't won. The Irishman, American Hustle, if we see that happen this year just because of the competition, I wouldn't be very surprised, but it would be disappointing because I love Poor Things. Barbie's got sound in the bag. And not sound. Barbie's got song in the bag, and it's definitely going to get at least costume or production, if not both. I predicted it to get 3 awards, but it's going to get at least 2 by the end of the night. Maestro, I think, is getting makeup, just the 1. American Fiction getting writing, Anatomy of a Fall getting writing. The Holdovers going home empty-handed. That would be disappointing. It's a really good, really simple, really awesome film. The Zone of Interest winning Best International Feature. And Past Lives, 2 nominations for Screenplay and Picture. I think the competition is a little too stacked for it to win, but I'm so glad it's on that list. In terms of the rankings of the likelihood that each of these films has to win Best Picture, I'm going to say, of these 10, the one that's least likely to win, I think is... if you asked me a few months ago, I wouldn't have said this, but... Well, no, I think this is so tough. I think if I had to rank these films in terms of what is least likely to win versus most likely to win, I think the least likely film to win is Past Lives. This isn't about the worst to the best. This is just statistically in terms of how things are going to work. It's only nominated for Screenplay. In addition to this, I don't see, it would have to win that award too and win this, and it would have to have this sudden surge in popularity in the next few days that I don't think it's had amongst awards voters. So I don't see it winning, even though it is a phenomenal film. Number 9, I think, is Maestro. A lot of people like Maestro, but I also think Maestro has plenty of detractors. In order to win the Academy Award, you have to get a lot of first place votes. All of the voters rank them from 1 to 10. So I'm not sure how I feel about there being enough passion for Maestro to get those many first place votes. To allow it to overtake every one of these films. I think a lot of people love it, but I don't know if enough people love it to put it over that line. So I'm going to say Maestro's next. Number 8, I'm going to say American Fiction. I think American Fiction, even though it's going to win Screenplay, is a film that doesn't, hasn't really broken out into the mainstream. It also has some people who criticized its presentation of its prime conversation, whether it was some people felt it was too simple, some people felt that they didn't delve into it enough, which means it's too simple. I think American Fiction, it just doesn't have that strength in any other category other than Screenplay. I don't see its performances winning. I don't see it winning for score. I think I would put it at number 8. Number 7, I would say, is The Zone of Interest. Even though it's going to win Best International Feature, I think it is too tame a film for the Oscars to give it the Best Picture award. It's too paced. It's too simple. It's too much of a meditation almost in its experience. And they don't typically award films that are very meditative. Granted, Nomadland won a few years ago, which felt somewhat more meditative in its pacing, but I think felt very relevant to the time. Not that The Zone of Interest isn't relevant to the time, but it's not so obviously relevant, and there isn't enough movement that takes place in the movie for, I think, people to give it those first place votes to win. So I'm going to say it's probably number 7. Now, these next 6, it is a tough one. It is a very tough one to say what number 6 is. I think I'm going to say Barbie's number 6. I think Barbie not getting director, not getting actress, and of course there was a lot of controversy behind that, but I think it's still something that, is just, it's too important to ignore in deciding who's going to win Best Picture. Coming out of the Barbenheimer experience, Barbie was considered the fun one, and the Oscars don't necessarily award fun, but not that Everything Everywhere All at Once, which won last year, isn't a fun movie. I just mean that means less to them than awarding a film of Oppenheimer's kind that is very much intense and forward thinking. And not that Barbie isn't, but Barbie is very much, when it comes to its forward thinking stuff, it's very simplistic, and some people have argued heavy-handed, and as a consequence I don't see it winning. Some people would say it's a little too silly or whatever. I don't consider it a silly film, but I think there's enough silliness in there that I don't see it winning Best Picture. So I'm going to put it at number 5. Number 6? Number 6. I'm going to put it at number 6. Number 5? I'm going to say The Holdovers. I could have seen this being the number 2 contender maybe a couple of award shows ago. It just hasn't won at enough places. It, has had a strong showing with, the performances. And the screenplay is a decent contender, but I think it's a little too simple. But that being said, the reason it's high up on the list is because it is so perfectly done and yet so simple, and yet it's the most moving amongst the 10 films. And I think if that means anything, it has the chance to come up to the next level. But I'm going to put it at number 5. These final four, I'm going to say number 4 is Poor Things. Poor Things is a phenomenal movie, and it's one of my favorites of last year. It is 11 nominations. It won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy. For the Oscars, I just think they think it's a little too weird. It's a little too weird to win and to be the poster child for the next year for the Oscars. It's going to, I would love for it to win something, because in my current predictions, it's going home empty-handed. But I do think that I would put it at number 4, very trepidatiously, but it's high up because it's got 11 nominations and everyone that's seen it loves it. But I just have a feeling it's a little too weird to take that award home. Number 3 is Killers of the Flower Moon. I think it is certainly, feels very relevant and present. It's Martin Scorsese. It's beautifully told. It's amazing filmmaking. There is no part of this film that isn't operating at 100 at all times in terms of just the perfection and the energy of it too. It is so good. It's probably going to win Best Actress, but it didn't get nominated for Screenplay, and I think that's just a little bit too much. Even though it got 10 nominations, it's just a little bit too much. I still think it's a little more palatable than Poor Things in terms of what it's about and what it focuses on, which is why I think it has a better shot at winning Best Picture. Number 2, I did not expect this at all, but I think number 2 is Anatomy of a Fall. It is, it's incredible. And it's a film that I would say is the most perfect of the films on this list. It is executed in a manner that I think has been so well renowned. It is simple in terms of it being a legal court case, but I think it is the one that allows any viewer to invest. Anybody on any quadrant, any demographic can watch and witness this film and be taken on an absolute ride. It gets into something you think you know a lot about, but you find out you really know nothing about, especially the legal proceedings in France and the way that functions around a particular incident. It is a film that I think is just so good in its execution that it's kind of undeniable. The lead performance is amazing. It's probably winning Screenplay, and it is on this list for a reason, but I actually think it's the second best contender because I can see it having international appeal. I can see it appealing to anybody. A lot of these films are kind of America-centric. I mean, Maestro is about a specific American composer. Killers of the Flower Moon, yes, it's about colonialism, and I think people can enjoy it, but I still think it's a little bit more America-centric. The Zone of Interest should be more of a global film, but it's not really being looked at that way. But I think Anatomy of a Fall has the ability to be observed and loved by anyone, anywhere, and I think that's a huge reason I'm going to put it at number 2. That being said, though, it doesn't matter. These rankings don't matter because Oppenheimer's winning. It won the Globe, the BAFTA, the Producers Guild, the Critics' Choice. It's winning everywhere. I'm predicting it to win. Well, I predicted 7 other awards. Let's say it wins a total of, I think it's going to win at least 6 Oscars. I'll put my money on 7 Oscars. I think I'm going to be wrong about one of those. I'm going to say Oppenheimer wins 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. It's winning everywhere, and people love it. And the mainstream loves it. It made almost $1 billion. It's one of the most recognized films of the year, made by one of the most beloved filmmakers in the world, with a cast containing literally everybody. It is a film worth celebrating. It has a message related to our time. It is so contemporary and historical at the same time. It is everything the Oscars want and then more, because it is also so innovative, so unique, so specific, and yet so appealing. It is unbelievable. It's Oppenheimer. It's Oppenheimer. Well, we did it. We made it to the end of a beautiful Oscar season. The show's this Sunday. Please check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, my social media information is in the description down below. Hit me up and give me some of your predictions. Comment below some of your predictions. Tell me what you think's going to win. Am I too in love with Oppenheimer that my biases are coming into play, or is it actually going to win so many awards? I think it is. That being said, please subscribe to the channel. Please watch the Oscars, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.